I guess I'll just go ahead and start off.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Tangerine Clementine Fruit Salad Tapper Ham Psi Telecon. So I'm Nathaniel W2NAF, and I've been very busy working on the Eclipse project, which we did very well last Monday. We got some very nice data from that. The RX888 system I have here, it worked absolutely beautifully. I got some really, really nice, um, very nice grape-like observations from that. So I was very happy. Tonight, I'm hoping after we go through the uh, call up here, we can spend some time talking about the upcoming Daisy Track 2 grant, which is that proposal's due in just about a month. And it's going to cause me lots of sleepless nights, I'm sure. So guess we'll just do the best we can. All right, so next, why don't we go to Dave KD0EAG?
Well, hello, everybody. I've been trying to get my world back on track a little bit, get back to doing some of these other things that have been um, kind of laying fallow while some of the other stuff has gone on. I'm eager to hear about how the data collection went. Not in the loop so much for that, but I've also been firing up the Clementine whatever schematics and making sure all my tools are working well, uh, but and answering emails. But otherwise, that's pretty much it for me.
Thanks, Dave. I see Dave Larson KB0S is on, so I'll let him go, and then I'll let him take over from there. So far I've gone, and Dave KD0EAG has gone.
Well, hello. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Well, sorry for being late. I got busy with something and delayed. This week, well, of course, the Eclipse and collected a lot of data. I'm getting ready for Hamvention. I have two VHF K9Q radio setups for display in the tapper booth. So I'll be able to, I figured that would be easier than trying to do HF at Hamvention. And so it'll be interesting to see how much chatter there is around the Hamvention on the VHF. So that's about it for what I'm doing. And so you've called on Dave. Have you called on Jim?
Nope. I've only called on Dave and myself.
Okay. Then I guess Jim, K4BSE. Go ahead.
Good evening, all. Well, I have run into something very strange on my grape tests. I'm running the Grape One original baseband, I call it, the Grape One RF, the magnetometer experiment, not part of Grape Two, but standalone, and the Grape Two. I was able to get the Grape Two up and running, I think 1.5 days before the eclipse, which was great. I appreciate the effort to get those out. Seems to be working well. But I ran into something very strange the other day, and unfortunately it affected my data on the day of the eclipse, my Grape One baseband data. The Grape One, I take all 4 experiments and I bring the video output from the Raspberry Pi and the keyboard and mouse to a KVM switch. So I can switch between the 4 experiments and keep an eye on what's going on. And I discovered I've been seeing some strange data on my Grape 1 baseband, the original experiment, for several days, off and on. It looked like the frequency had gone way low, like the ionosphere was going up, 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 up for hours and hours on end, and that didn't seem reasonable. I discovered finally, and I didn't discover this until the day after the eclipse, I discovered that for some reason, when I set the KVM switch to the Grape 2, the Grape 1, I get a, and the frequency display, waterfall, I see a carrier about 20 hertz below the carrier, the 10 megahertz carrier translated to 1 kilohertz, at 20 hertz low. And it goes away when I switch the KVM switch to any other position. And I have no idea what's going on there. I figured that out, and I figured that I could, by simply unplugging the mouse, the USB with the mouse and the keyboard from the Grape 2, I could prevent that from happening. Of course, you don't need the mouse and the keyboard except for initial setup. And I was grateful for the instructions John sent out to get data out of it, because I'm going to use that on the presentation I'm making to our local ham club. But the rest of the time I didn't need it, so I just unplugged that. And I haven't had time to go in and figure out any more about what's going on. And knowing that Christina is using that data, I really didn't want to introduce any interference to the data when I could avoid it. So it's still a big mystery at this point. Back to K4BSE.
Well, thank you. Hopefully somebody here has some comment on that, but let's go ahead with the rest of the list. Next on the list is Rob, AI6VN. Rob, can you make some brief comments?
Yeah, back to net.
Okay.
Well, we have lots to talk about, but you know, the important thing is we seem to get almost everyone except Bill's site logging data during the eclipse. I now have 18 Whisper Demon Grape sites reporting as of this evening. So, including a new one down in North Carolina on the coast. So the eclipse is not the end of our the grape Whisper Demon Grape by any means. So I'll be doing a lot more of that. So anyway, we can go into other things if you guys want to, but I took a vacation last week. So back to net.
Very good. Next on the list is Bill Engelke. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I'm back after a hiatus. I was helping out the Prentice Concert Chorale who needed some more singers, and we just did our big concert, which was Mozart's Requiem. We did that with a 25-piece orchestra and about 60 singers at our church yesterday. So that was a big thing. Yeah, as Rob mentioned, I have some problem with my RX 888, and I don't think it has to do with the RX 888. I think it has to do with, I think I've got a bad installation of the KA9Q software. So probably just reinstallation of everything is probably potentially could fix it. So I really haven't had time to work on that. I've been slammed with getting everything ready to upload data to MIT, the Madrigal system from the spot data, and just starting to see daylight at the end of that. I've been consumed with it. It's such a difficult process. But anyway, I did, quick question for Nathaniel. How many different places are there in the histogram package where the data gets deleted? Is there more than one place where that takes place? Because I went in and commented out because I like to keep that data. There's a OS command which deletes everything in the data directory. And
We lost you there, Bill.
Just your mic.
let me, my system is, I have to go through and use the sound.
There it goes.
Yeah, I have
Whoop.
to call the sound. I have to call it the sound mixer. And how's that? Any better?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Anyway, I commented out the one place I found out where the files are removed, but they still get deleted. I have to go in and set an immutable attribute to keep them from getting deleted. Do you know offhand, Nathaniel?
It might be I often call this routine called like prep directories or prep_dir, and that can have a flag that's like clear directories. And if
Okay.
that flag is set true, it will delete everything that was there.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, I'll look for that. I could not find I knew it was happening in more than one place, but couldn't find it. But anyway, we had a pretty good experience with the Eclipse data collection. Got a few little bugs that keep plaguing us that knock the watchdog offline sometimes. We don't ever lose any data, but what'll happen is all the uploads will get ignored. I mean, the uploads take place, they just don't get reflected in the database. And I got a software package which will go through and fix that. But that's one of the things we're looking for now. We've got a lot of little cleanups. Got my students available for about another 3 weeks before they're gone for the summer. So we're trying to clean up all those remaining pesky little bugs while we still have access to them. So that's where we're at. Back to Net.
Thanks a lot. And I do want to thank Bill for last month pointing out some effects picked up by our system on the solar flare. That may be one of those things that we can put a little more focus on after we don't have any more eclipses for a while. So thank you, Bill.
There's plenty of
Next on the list is Bob in 5BRG. Go ahead, Bob.
Hello, everybody. I had a fun time with the eclipse and didn't get to see very much because we had a lot of clouds here and so my photography side of it. And I was trying to do a spectral analysis of the sun throughout the thing. I built up a little gradient unit to try to do with a linear array, trying to do spectral analysis, and that didn't work out too well. But the radio stuff seemed to work pretty well and uploaded data. I'm pretty tickled with that. We had a lot of interest from students coming up and volunteering to help with setup, help understand what we were doing and why we were there. There was several of us there with the astronomy group, radio astronomy, amateur radio astronomy group, trying to do monitoring and things. One fellow was watching the eclipse at 10 gig. And anyway, 3 of them got interested enough that they adopted this as a lab project, and gonna try to understand what the effect of the eclipse was on the ionosphere. I don't expect them to get too deep into it based on a conversation with them today, but they're gonna attempt to and probably learn some. May end up with an amateur radio license out of it in the long run, I hope. So anyway, that's all I've got now. Back to the net.
Okay. Next on the list is David in 1HAC. Go ahead, David.
Good evening, everyone. Yeah, we had a good time with the eclipse. We got good data on our EM Doppler system. Going to be interested to compare that with all the other events. And very interesting that we've created a way to enjoy an eclipse, whether it's cloudy or not. But we actually had very nice weather in the northern New England for the eclipse. Some high fins trying to work their way in, but during the eclipse, that wasn't a problem for us. Number of interesting phenomena. besides what we'll see in the radio. There was a burst of wind just before the eclipse got to us, as we were seeing the shadow come at us. But I think the most intriguing effect of the eclipse was mosquitoes. We we noticed it, and it turns out this was a phenomenon over here. No clue, hadn't seen that one before, but the mosquitoes came out. We hadn't seen mosquitoes yet this season anyway, and so I don't get it. But a lot of different effects to go back and investigate. So back to Net.
Okay, well, that sounds interesting. Next on the list is Franco K4VZ. Been a couple weeks, Franco. Welcome back.
Hey, thanks, Dave. I've been actually from here, from Jacksonville, we had 60% of the clips. So my wife made a so-called pinhole camera, and I was able to get to see on the little screen the shape of the sun and the moon on top of it, like the circle of the sun. So it was pretty cool, even if it didn't get much darker. The other thing I've been working is, I don't know if you guys are familiar, maybe I'll talk about next week when there's more time, this little prototype. This is a so-called DFC, which is Philharmon project, okay? And Jin Zepeng from China made a prototype, and I've been writing some code for the FX3 about it. So maybe I'll spend some more time. Again, I don't want to take too much time here to show you about it and talk about it, but I was able to stream about 435 kilobytes per second of data from the FX3 here. So it's a promising project, and it has two ADCs, two 2208s, and it's pretty, it's still a prototype, but it's a good project that I'd like to explain later on. Back to you, Dave.
Sounds very interesting. I look forward to hearing more about that. Next on the list is Gareth, KD2 SAK. Go ahead, Gareth.
Evening, everybody. It's been a while since I've been on this Telecon. I think the last time was when it was on TeamSpeak. So it's good to be here. Nothing really to report. I'm just here to listen. As Nathaniel said, we're kind of gearing up for a DAISY proposal. So Nathaniel suggested I pop in more regularly now on Monday evenings to listen in and participate in these telecons. If we're sharing eclipse stories, I was fortunate enough to be in Dallas and witness totality. Nature put on quite the stage show where we had clouds and then fewer and fewer clouds, and then we went into totality with a cloud in the way, and then the cloud slowly rolled out of the way to reveal totality, and we had about 3 minutes of it. It was a good show. And I was able to show some early results from a grape, FL Digi grape we have here at NJIT, of the eclipse signature to the meeting on Tuesday. And everybody was very happy and very pleased to see it, and was very excited about the potential of what's to come. So back to Net.
Very good. Next on the list is Gary, AF8A. Go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Good to see a lot of familiar faces tonight. Just a couple of things. I've been spending a fair amount of time getting the HAMSI website updated. If anybody goes to the homepage, there are links there to upload your solar eclipse QSO party logs. You participated in the Gladstone Signal Spotting Challenge. Links there to do your entries. And there's also the information for the 2024 Hamvention. Of course, HAMSI and Tapper will be neighbors once again. So there's new maps because our forums have moved. Volunteers set it to work the booth, so on and so forth. So that's all at the HAMSI homepage. Back to Net, Dave.
Okay. Next on the list, trying to make sure I didn't skip anybody, would be Joe, W7LUX. Go ahead, Joe.
Thank you, Dave, and good evening, everyone. Well, 60% eclipse coverage and 99% cloud coverage. So I did manage to get a few pictures in there, but in general it was pretty cloudy. And the two grape setups, the old original one and the Eclipse version, worked just fine. As far as I can tell, everything cranked right along. Thank you, Dave.
Okay. Next on the list is Jonathan, KC0EEY. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Hi, everybody. I posted a thread about my eclipse observations in VLF. A lot of really good observations, similar to others who were observing VLF. The observations regarding the spherics and the absorption of the Earth ionosphere waveguide, they looked really good and really interesting, of course. And I'm trying to track down the issue of a GPS problem that I'm having with my VLF system. That's all I have. Back to the net.
Okay. Next on the list is Christina, KD8OXT. Go ahead, Christina.
There we go. Hi, folks. Sorry, things are scattered here. One of the students got hit by a car earlier this evening, so we are dealing with that.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, well, he's awake, so I have more intel coming in. Anyways, so yeah, just preoccupied. But Eclipse went very well. We had a splendid time here, fantastic view of totality. Visiting delegation was very entertained. The students got fantastic data. I'm having a couple of them over on Thursday. We're going to kind of sit down and get all the data from the CHU experiment into some verified form so that they can cite it. One of them, I think, is planning to continue that analysis into his master's thesis. So that's the main thing there. And I'm mainly here to confer with Nathaniel about plans for the upcoming DAISY grant. So other than that, the Eclipse stuff is fantastic, and I've been playing around with just the Grape 1 data a little bit so far, but I think we got some really good stuff here.
Very good. Next on the list is Paul Elliott. Comments, Paul?
Yeah, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. No particular comments. I am very interested in the DAISY proposal, and if there's something that we can do to support it, love to hear about it. But nothing else in particular. Back to net.
By the way, your Beacon Blaster Whisper song worked like a champ here.
That's always good to hear. Thank you for the report. That is gratified. Thank you.
Yep. Next on the list is Ron, K8DTJ. Go ahead, Ron.
Hi, everybody. I think it's my first time at this meeting. I just wanted I was at HAMSI in Cleveland, and I wanted to check you all out. I was also in Cleveland at Cleveland State University, and we had sort of an eclipse watching party there, and also participated in the QSO party. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have. Thanks.
Okay. And let's see. Next on the list, we have Scott. Can I call him Scott? Scott, N5TNL. Did I call on you?
I think he might have said he couldn't.
Yeah, he
No
has no
mic?
microphone. Yeah.
Okay. Then last on my list is Tom, N5EG. Welcome, Tom. I saw Tom a while ago. But Tom, do you have any comments? Nope. So Nathaniel, I think I've called on everybody, and there's
Michael
a lot
Narut, I think, is here.
Who?
Michael Narura.
Oh, Michael, are you?
Hello,
AC?
everyone. Greetings. Back to you, Dave.
Oh, well, that's your normal comment. Thank you.
And Tom writes that his audio interface failed.
Oh, okay. And Michael, AAK, his Beacon Blaster worked as a champ too. So then I guess we're back and Nathaniel has the next order of business.
All right. Good
Go ahead.
Thanks a lot, Dave. Good evening, everyone. So, as you know, about 4 years ago, we won a Daisy Track 1 proposal to develop a personal space weather station, and that really has turned into quite the thing. It maybe did not turn out exactly as we had originally planned all the way, but I think we've had a number of great successes. I think that the GRAPE system has really produced fantastic data. We have a really nice website now that's collecting all of that GRAPE data and the magnetometer data. We have the Tapper ham-sci magnetometers, and now with Rob Robinette's group and with Phil Karn, we have the RX 888s. And then now with Paul Elliott, we have these GPS disciplined whisper sonds as well. So there's really quite a complement of instruments. So that first GRAPE grant, or not GRAPE grant, the Personal Space Weather Station grant, that's winding down this year. And there's a brand new call for another grant for in the DAISY program, which stands for Distributed Array of Small Instruments. And I would like to go for that again. So this grant is what we call a Track 2 grant. So instead of being for the development of an instrument, it's for deployment and operations. And so we have to, with this particular grant, we're not allowed to put in any development. We are only allowed to put in instruments that are already known to work and have been tested and things like that. So I think we have a number of those things. You know, I think what I'd like to see in this proposal is that we deploy a combination of RX 888 systems, VLF, Jonathan's VLF systems, magnetometers, and whisper sonds, and then put a lot of effort into the development of the website and the operations, and kind of, you know, pushing the scientific goals. So what I wanted to come here tonight was I was hoping that I'd be able to write the grant in such a way that I could work with Tapper and the people on this call where we'd either you know, purchase devices from Tapper like magnetometers and things like that, or work with the team here to build and deploy some of these devices. I think the deployment would probably go similarly to what we did for the GRAPE 2s, where we might have Gary hopefully help to coordinate, help to site, find people who'd be willing to host these instruments, and then we would work on assembling kits and then sending them out to people and asking them to field them. So on the group, so for tonight, if everyone's agreeable with those ideas, I'd like to try to get some reasonable ideas of what the per instrument cost would be for these things. And I have some ballpark numbers in my head, and I can put them on the screen and we can see if we agree with them. And then I think we also want to have a discussion about how many of these things we want to have and where we want to put them. And, you know, part of that discussion, I think, is going to come back to, we have to have science goals to tie everything together. And so we've started to have some discussion about that already. But I think, you know, there's definitely room for more discussion, and that's one of the reasons I've invited Christina and Gareth, you know, to be on the call tonight to help talk about the you know, help along with the science goals and discussion as well. How does that sound to everybody?
Yep, good.
Okay. Maybe I'll start by putting up what I kind of think the numbers are of these things, and we can see if this is if I'm anywhere near correct. So what I was thinking was that these are supposed to be turnkey costs for the systems. So that would include everything from cabling, assembly, shipping out to a person, things like that. So I thought magnetometers might be about $500 each. RX 888 systems might be about $750 each. VLF systems might be $500 each. And I don't know what Whisper Sans cost, but I said $1,000 each. Does this seem like reasonable numbers?
In
I
the
can,
RX-88, you can include also the B-Link computer or just the SDR?
I'd include. I was thinking this would have like a B-Link computer. Why don't we
Okay.
start? Let's start with the magnetometer. So instead of trying to go through all these at once, magnetometers. I know that Tapper currently sells them, at least the Scotty variation, for $120 each. And then I know that in addition to that, you have to probably have another $50 to $100 worth of PVC pipes and things like that. And then you also have to have another probably $100 to $150 worth of Raspberry Pis. And then uh you have to make sure you have the Cat 6 to connect it all together. And then you have to be able to ship that to someone. So I said that would probably cost about $500 altogether.
So that would be the two boards, both the remote board and the Pi hat, and then also power supplies and that kind of thing too, right?
Yes. So that should include everything to get someone set up with a magnetometer.
That powers straight off the Pi, doesn't it?
What's that, Dave?
I think that powers straight off the Pi, doesn't require a separate supply.
True.
The magnetometer interface.
Yeah, that's correct.
True, but the Pi needs a power supply.
Right, but a Pi kit, you could price that would have supply and the Pi and the SD card and all that bundled in.
David Witten, did you have any comments on that?
I would say that I wouldn't argue with your number there for an initial, you got to build in a little breathing room, and you can reallocate it somewhere else when it turns out you need it, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and that's I want to have a little bit of headroom with these numbers, because by the time these grants get funded, it's like a year and a half from now before you actually get to order anything.
Things change, yeah.
Things change. And you don't know. It's just nice to have a little bit of headroom with this stuff.
That's what I'm saying. I wouldn't argue with that.
Okay. How about the RX 888?
I think that sounds reasonable to me. I mean, you've got 175 for the deliberate RX 888, $250 for a host, the B-Link. And then it's going to need a kit and to modify, and you need the you need a GPSDO.
Right.
So
RX.
if you add a, I don't know what Tapper wants, but for the GERT, but I would think $100 was, I think a B-Link is, well, the B-Link is like $250, and well, anyway, I'm telling you what I'm buying. Yeah, you're adjusting them. I can see. Yeah. Okay. Well, and then you need the kit, which is GERT, a GERT.
What's the GERT kit?
It's equivalent to Bodnar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the
That's
Bodnar costs,
GPSDO.
I just looked it up, $156 for the, single channel Bodnar that includes an antenna.
Do you need extra fan and cooling, Rob?
I'm sorry. What was the question?
A fan and cooling for the 888.
I haven't found it necessary.
Okay.
With the I'm running, 6 or 7 of them, and they're all passively cooled with the
Okay.
thermal mod and running at 64 megasamples. I haven't had a failure. My failures have all been due to external clock now problems,
about-
which Paul is
how-
fixing.
How about antenna components for that?
Yeah.
It doesn't cost, it's not a lot, but it's not, it doesn't cost nothing.
There
Yeah.
are so many options there.
I know, but even just a basic,
Wire
Okay.
antenna.
What would we use for an antenna on it? Just
Yeah, what's the frequency range so we can think about that?
Well,
Uh,
30 to
HF.
10 meters is easily lower that you can go all, the AAA and Whisper Demon, you
It-
can do every band, 2200 through 10. It's just a function of how sensitive your antenna is.
right.
And
Well, that's what we're asking. Do we use a loop? Do we use a dipole, fan dipole?
yeah,
for the whisper sound, and this would possibly also apply to the 888. My numbers, I just, end fed half wave 80 to 10. That's $200, $205. You add $100 for your coax and, $12 for some adapters. That comes to $317 for basically the antenna part of the kit.
I'm not sure an end-fed is appropriate for a broadband receiver like that because it becomes very directional at higher frequencies.
You, like I said, you've got all sorts of options.
Yeah.
There, and for a receiver, well, yeah, okay. It all depends on the antenna.
I was interested in what Michael Howen was talking about, the loop on the ground idea. I have to investigate that.
it
His
seems to be a
experience.
lot less sensitive overall.
Yes.
So,
Right.
so
But it's
maybe I'm a,
broadband, and it's still low noise as long as you have a good preamp on it.
So if you would like to see the difference, look up Michael's site on Grafana, and the big difference between his Missouri site and his North Dakota site is the antenna. And the antenna in Missouri is about a 250, 300 foot long wire.
yeah. I mean, you don't really, you don't need a resonant antenna for receiving. I mean, it can help a little bit, but
right.
And and the loop on ground is great, but it has installation problems. I mean, you've got, you have to worry about lawnmowers and kids and all the other stuff. So
his decision to use a loop on the ground in North Dakota is lack of trees in his mother's house lot, and the fact that somebody is going to mow the lawn, and he didn't have a way to protect the antenna any other way.
It seems to me that this is going to be so site specific. You're probably just going to want to have some round number that'll be, approximately correct for most installations, unless you want to specify, every single component of this.
Right.
The antenna is certainly going to be site dependent, at least it normally would be anyway.
Even a 20-foot vertical wire worked against a ground rod can be an effective receiving antenna.
So that brought
maybe
the RX 888 system up a bit.
Yeah.
But I was surprised how much all the little parts, at least from DX Engineering, added up to when I ordered a spare kit of parts for just a wire antenna and all the things it would cost me to make another, just a spare one. It kind of added up.
Yeah.
And you have to be
It does
careful.
add up fast.
you have to be careful about like buying coax off of Amazon, as I've discovered. 50-foot chunk of RG58 had like 10 dB extra attenuation.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, and this wasn't just a one-off. I bought two of them, and they both measured horribly.
Oh yeah. My boss bought cheap RG58 from Amazon, thinking he was saving money. It was 35% shield.
I think there's a German saying that we can't afford to buy cheap things.
Right.
Yes.
But there's cheap, and then there's
Yeah.
adequate. So
Right.
Yeah.
You can be reasonable here.
There are inexpensive, reputable sources.
Yeah.
But now I brought the Whisper Demon system up to $1,000, and so that probably is a more comfortable number,
Yeah.
I would think. All right. How about Jonathan, the VLF system?
So I was going to recommend that the total cost be brought up by $100, but we could break everything out. I'll give you an estimate. I actually prepared. I prepared a basic cost estimate, and so there are two primary parts. There's the E-field antenna, and no, actually there are three. The E-field antenna, the GPS antenna, and the back-end processor. Those are the three primary parts. The GPS antenna, I haven't. We could say that it could be $175. Unless you feel that's too low.
No, that's not low. That's fine.
All right. Because yeah, I was thinking a bullet antenna, something like a bullet antenna instead of a puck.
Yeah. Well, I've been buying the Rosenbergers that are a very nice antenna for considerably less than that.
What's their gain?
36.
Oh, really?
They're very high gain. The
Are
only
they-
problem I've had with them is some of the GPS units don't like to power it. It has a big surge current when you turn it on.
Oh, understood. Okay.
But if it works great.
Is it can
I'm on our newer AM Doppler system.
could it be driven by 3.3 volts?
I believe so. I think it works from 3 up.
Can you drop if you have it, can you drop a link into the chat?
For this spreadsheet?
Well, no. For the antenna, so I could investigate it because that was something that I haven't looked at.
Oh, you're asking David McGaw to do that?
Yes.
David, yeah. All right, thank you.
This is the model.
All right.
There are a lot of places on eBay and such you can get them from.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. So yeah, we'll say 175 for the GPS antenna, and whoops. Let's see here.
Yeah. Just if I might interrupt, they're $32 level for new antennas. The only thing is it might not work on 3.3. They're showing 4 to 6 volts.
All right. Let's see. Do I have prices on here? So Nathaniel, I have a very conservative estimate of $400 for the back end processor. And the active antenna assembly should cost about $150. Now these are lowballed, so I would add some padding to them. I didn't get a chance to completely price everything, but I will be doing that shortly to get a more accurate, up-to-date price, which is probably going to be much higher.
Okay.
So I have a question. Nathaniel, at your house, when he installed it, you dug a huge trench. Was that solely for the purpose of Jonathan's radio, or was that multi-purpose?
Right now I've got Jonathan's radio and my magnetometer out on that trench.
So does it need to be separated at that large distance from other noise sources?
It does.
So that would limit some of the sites that you can install it at, right?
Yeah. Now it obviously doesn't have to be trenched, and there may be sites where the wire could just be run along the ground.
Okay.
Like in an area that isn't mowed or anything.
Yeah.
But yes, it definitely has to be as far away from sources of mains power as possible.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's definitely going to limit this. But there are quite a bit of people who have very large plots of land, like
yes,
and it would just have to be installed there. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. But anyway, so
What if
so
I call it $1,000 for each of these?
yeah, actually, $1,000 seems adequate for this, because so with the antenna, there's the mast, there's the mounts, the PVC pipe, the copper tape, the preamp board, all the fittings and everything else.
Yeah.
That's going to cost probably about $150. It won't cost much, but $150 is kind of like a padded amount. And then the back end processor, that's going to cost like $400.
Okay.
So with this price right now at $1,000, I believe this should definitely cover it and should also pad it in case of inflation.
Okay.
Does that cover all of your weatherproofing needs and that sort of thing for that? That most of the electronics are remote with the antenna, aren't they?
Yeah, everything's going to be enclosed in the PVC pipe. The back-end processor, that will be installed in the shack. And I don't really and there's the GPS antenna mount. we might want to add $75 to the GPS antenna cost. But it really shouldn't cost that much. But
We did not include GPS antennas over here.
will the RX 888 use a GPS antenna?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, so I assume that a lot of people have gotten away with pretty good performance using a puck antenna on their Bodnars, right?
So far, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, the VLF system needs an actual outdoor antenna. But for uses with Bodnars, usually it seems like that the puck antennas are work just fine, but with the VLF it's totally different animal, because the VLF uses the pulse per second, and that you need a consistent up-to-date timing solution, and you need constant good signal for that.
Mm-hmm.
But I assume with the Bodnars, since you're just tickling an oscillator to keep it on track, it's probably not as critical. But I don't have a lot of experience with those.
Are we gonna have trouble with the GERT kit? I mean, the GERT kit's not a Bodner, so I guess John would know better if a puck antenna is going to be good enough for that.
Well, I've had experience with Glenn's implementation, the original implementation, and it's as sensitive and as accurate as a Bogner. So I
Okay.
don't, and in general, in my experience, the puck antennas work just great if you put them outside in a clear spot. I buy a $15 100-foot run of RG6 satellite RG6 from
Mhm.
Amazon and put the pucks in the best location possible, and I get how the Kiwis will track 12 satellites simultaneously. So it's whereas if you try to do anything with a Bogner or anything else where you put it in your window or out the side of your house, the Bogner is a lot more sensitive than the GERT.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as you get 10 feet away from the house, there's no difference.
The problem is mounting a putt, having it in with a clear sky.
Well, if you've got I use little Altoid pins and put them on the top of them, and or if you like I did in Maui, I had a metal roof, so I just stuck it on the metal roof. That was incredible. I'd be tracking 40 satellites at once.
Yeah. So what I have on the screen now is more than I had in my original budget, but I also kind of think it's actually a more appropriate number for the budget for doing deployment than I had originally. And it really is actually a pretty small fraction of the whole grant. I think
You didn't. Did we detail the whisper sound?
No, we have
no.
not.
So we
I'm
should.
ready. I'm ready when you are.
All
if you
right,
want to hear the numbers.
go for it.
Okay. I've got it broken up into the whisper sound, kind of the system stuff, and then the antenna part separately. The whisper sound, the 6-band filter combiner, a Bodnar, which includes its little puck antenna, a power brick, and just the miscellaneous SMA jumper cables. That added up to $1,036. But for you, special deal, $1,000. And there's some padding in that. If I get to make more than a few, I'm sure I can bring that down a bit. And then for the antenna, it came to basically $300 for the that was again the end-fed half wave and some coax and some, $12 worth of little adapters to go from the PL 259 to SMA. So, that total came to $1,353.
Okay.
So that was, and I'm not including, mounting hardware for antennas or anything like that.
You need to add a GERT in. You need a GERT.
Well, I added a Bodnar, and I'm figuring a GERT's going to
Okay.
be less than that. If
Yes,
we get
okay,
it,
okay.
if we get it, that'll knock, $25 or $50 off the price, maybe.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm calling it $1,500 for Whisper Sound.
That's good, and that gives us some flexibility when it comes to what I've got here. Just gives you six channel output, and we can figure out how to handle the additional, 2 more outputs depending on how you want to handle those. That gives us some slack in the budget for that.
Okay. That sounds good. So I'm going to have to go look at my budget. So right now we're deploying 30 of each of the receiving things and 10 of the Whisperson things. I'm going to have to go look in my budget because I originally only had 60,000 here. So I've got to find like another $30,000 if that's what we're actually going to deploy, which might be doable. But
Are those all new deployments? De novo? Nothing
what's
here.
that?
Are those all, is everything here assuming that it's all new equipment?
That's the goal, yes.
Yeah, okay, nothing carried over from the previous.
Yeah, that's right. So my thought is here, this would be all like deploying new things that to augment what's already out there.
Okay.
So I guess that's and there are some places I can potentially take money from. Like I have, $20,000 a year in travel. I mean, if I knock that down to even 15 a year, and then let's say this goes up to 90,000. How much? So does that work? Total allowed? 2 million? I'm 11,000. I don't know where that number is coming from. Because right now it says I'm 11,000 over right there. But then I can say knock this down to like 7,500. A year. Now I'm just over. There. I'm allowed $2 million. I'm now at 1.998 million. So, um,
Add rubber bands and paper clips, and you're there.
yeah. So I'm a little overspent year one because you're supposed to be like 500K a year, but the total, that's not really overspent that much, and the total award is, less, is within budget. So I think it could work. I think that still works. So that says that we have $90,000 year one to yeah, we've got $90,000 year one to build and deploy these things. And then years 2, 3, and 4, we still have $7,500 or $7,000 a year to keep, for extra parts and stuff to repair stuff or things like that. So now the big question, and actually we're starting to run out of time, and I know that probably Gareth and some other people need to go, but I think that the next big question is, are we happy with these numbers, and where do we want to deploy them, and kind of what science are we going to get from these things?
I think they all sound quite realistic to me. But
And if you like, Nathaniel, I can send you, my detailed breakdown. There's not much more than what you've already got here, but if
Yeah,
you'd like to see it, I'm happy to share it with you.
Sure, that sounds great. If you send it to me, then I might include it. And Jonathan Rizzo, if you have a more detailed spreadsheet pulled together, I just kind of like spitballed things here. But if you can email me a more detailed list, then it'll make the budget look like it was a little bit better thought out. I'll probably round things up to get them to these numbers, but then I'll have the actual parts,
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds really good.
So are you thinking like 30 units across the lower 48, or just across the U.S. or southern Canada, or how big of a geographic spread will
Well,
be?
I think Gareth and Christina, maybe, I know it's 10 o'clock, so maybe we can just spend like 15 more minutes on this, then we can continue the conversation on Wednesday and then again next week. But yeah, so for building out this network, do we want to continue focusing on the continental US? Logistically, that's certainly the easiest. Or do the next logistical easiest thing to do is to do both US and Canada. And then beyond that, it gets a little bit more complicated.
Does the NSF have any strong feelings about things getting deployed in the US versus elsewhere?
I don't really know. I think the NSF is in general, as long as you have good science justification for it, I think that's what they're interested in. The logistical things that I don't know how to deal with or haven't really thought about dealing with are like, as soon as you send instruments out of the country, there's like sometimes taxes and tariffs and customs and things you have to deal with.
Yeah, do we have any
So-
ITAR things? I hope not, but
I
Gareth is
don't
nodding.
I don't think
We
we're
have
doing any
TPSPOs.
I don't think we're doing any ITAR because I mean everything is like open source, and so I don't think there's anything here that really counts as ITAR.
I mean, the 888s come from China. So.
Yeah, which actually, so that's a
TPSPOs come from Canada. But
and so actually that is kind of an issue too, because the new grant call actually requires us to comply to the Buy America, Build America Act. So
Yeah, but I looked at that. I thought that had to do with steel and concrete and some other things. I don't know if it was 100% of the materials or just.
yeah, I don't know. I think as much as we can, like we may have to ask for a waiver for the RX 888. I think if Tapper has a American made replacement for the RX 888 by the time we start buying stuff, I think we would, and if it were demonstrated to work, I think we'd use that instead. Um, but I think we would, and certainly like the GERT is going to be more American made than the Bodner. And our whisper sounds, they're coming from America, right, Paul?
Yeah, the finished product, the final assembly, is all in the United States. There are components.
How far are you from the border there in Friday Harbor?
We're actually closer to Canada than we are to mainland USA, but
yeah,
we're still on the right side. the correct side of the line there.
We need to buy some made in
Yeah.
USA stickers.
Yeah. But
Well, you ship it as kits, and then we can say assembled in the USA.
I mean,
the B-Link and Athenium are made in China too. I don't know if you can find the Dell equivalent or something like that. That probably is easier than replacing the 888.
Yeah, that's probably true too.
There are going to be a lot more, if there is such a thing.
Maybe we could get permission to manufacture them under license.
The B links or the
Well, not the 888.
the RX 888s. That'd be interesting.
I think that's open source, fair game. Anybody can build one if they want to. Isn't that the case, Rob?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if someone wants to reverse engineer it and build it here, but you know,
I think
you're going to have to probably double your the cost of the 888 then.
If you buy an original 2208 from the US, it's going to cost you twice as much, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, we're rocking a hard place here, guys.
Well, we need to understand the grant, because the grant says the funding opportunity may be obligated unless all iron, steel, manufactured products, and construction materials are produced in the United States. This may not apply to us at all, so we ought to find that out.
That's a good question.
And
Have
it
you
says-
read it in more detail?
No, I'm just looking at the grant. I'm going to the Buy America, Build America webpage now.
So I think that's
Just remember, none of the chips come from here.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, you can't, if that was the case, you couldn't do anything. We'll be making smoke signals, so we got to be careful, so.
I think like a quick program officer chat, Nathaniel would probably clear that up probably pretty quick, because you probably wouldn't be the first to ask that. And regarding deployment, yeah, it has. I think it would have to be guided by the science question. So if there's no need to go into Canada, then you could avoid all the hassle of ever worrying about export. And even though there probably isn't any, but still, you probably have to talk to people about it and make sure and all that good stuff. So
yeah. I feel like sending things up to Canada. Well, I feel like sending things up to Canada probably will not incur much of an export issue. Number one. And number two, I think in terms of science targets, it's gonna be there's if there's a certain place to expand to, expanding up to Canada makes a lot of scientific sense, I think.
I like the
I agree.
idea too.
Yeah.
And also we can bring in organizations like the Radio Amateurs of Canada and stuff to help us, but also, isn't it true that 90% of the Canadian population is within 100 miles of the US border? I mean, whatever that number is.
Well, we do have a receive,
right.
and there are receive and transmit candidate sites up at Ellesmere Island, VY0 ERC. And the problem we've had with maintaining those sites, I mean, the receive site, the problem has just been that the receive antenna breaks, and the volunteer who goes up there every 9 months or every summer is too busy to really focus on making the system resilient. But that's a site that I would say ought to be a top target for transmitter and receiver. There is an existing transmit site up there that works much more reliably, but it's maintained by a different group.
And
Rob,
we have some Baffin Island sites as well.
Yeah,
Rob, you seem to have been thinking a bit about where to put things. What are your thoughts so far?
Well, to me, if you look at the map of the world, right, and Arnie's Grafana page with the animated whisper transmissions, everything is concentrated in Europe and the US. And so we already have tremendously good coverage we have 5 or 6 whisper sounds already deployed, like 15 ARCS 888 sites. So if we want to get new science information, I think we have to get outside of North America and Europe, because we've got 888s, GPS 888s, and set up to do grape reporting in Europe. So the to me the greatest, but I'm not a scientist here. I'm basically the uh, systems engineer.
I don't
But
know
to
if this
me,
is the place to consider putting one or two down in Antarctica, like Murdo or
and
South Pole.
yeah, I think that I thought that Gareth was and it was looking into addressing an NSF.
That's why I'm bringing that up.
Yeah, yeah. And that certainly would be a place. We actually have a whisper sound that I think is down in Antarctica, but didn't get turned on. So even Antarctica is not necessarily the virgin territory. The best, we have, if you want to look at the ionosphere, I think interesting areas might be South America and the South Atlantic. There's virtually nobody receiving or sending. There's almost nothing, not entirely nothing, but almost nothing being sent or received from South America or Africa.
Yeah.
Or the South Pacific. I mean,
Yeah.
you've got a gap from between. There's one guy in Chile, and nobody in French Polynesia sending in or receiving whisper signals. And it seems to me that those are areas that would be of almost virgin territory for ionospheric measurements, and that would seem to me to be areas which would benefit the science community the most, is to start measuring areas that we aren't so well covered already. But I'm not the one to determine the science goals here, but that's my impression. But by the way, there is a network of sites operated by Roland, HB9VQQ, has 40 transmit sites already deployed with multi-band antennas around the world at some incredible sites. He's got the South African Space Center on some island out in the middle of the South Atlantic, sending out whisper signals that are almost heard by nobody because they're so weak. And this 200 milliwatt transmitter. So there's places where, and I've talked to Roland he'd be very excited to upgrade these sites. So they already have antennas. They've got 80 through 10 meter antennas. They have people who are interested in operating and maintaining them. And Roland has figured out how to get stuff shipped there. So, if you want to really broaden the reach of this project to the worldwide, and I think, extend the usefulness of the measurements they're making. I don't want to diminish the difficulty. I saw how Roland struggled to get things shipped off to these different sites, but he's done it and he's ready to actually. It sounds like he'd be interested in managing an upgrade process and maintenance, and he's got the people. This is almost the most important thing: is you have somebody on site. That was our problem up on Ellesmere Island. He's got the transmit site, and he's somehow recruited somebody who's up there all the time, and they maintain it. And I don't have such a person for the receive site, so the receive site goes down.
So is that blow a hole in our budget trying to get something deployed on a container or some research vessel out to Ascension Island or something like that? I don't know.
He managed to do it. I mean, the equipment that we sent up to Ellesmere, we sent a couple of Kiwis and a little think center, and Pierre Costa, who's called, I forget, will probably be at Hamvention. We can talk to him about it. But I think the problem I saw there at all of these interesting sites is that you need someone who's really there permanently and who has either the level of personal interest or the institutional sponsorship to invest their time in monitoring and maintaining the sites. But I think that if that were the case, I think you'd find a lot of valuable information that is not being currently recorded by anybody would be obtained. But
I mean,
so
I feel like that sounds like the most compelling thing to do because, you know, like with the science that we're doing, like all of these science targets, we really do have a very well built out network already in the US and maybe Canada. And going to these other places, like you said, that's kind of where we need stuff.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I've got a fellow who has a decent installation up at Inuvik, which is up on the Arctic Circle in Canada, and the western near Alaska, and one at Ellesmere, but each, especially a receive site, really requires it isn't something you can throw up a transmitter easily. I mean, we saw how easy it was. Clint went out last week with his Whispersond derived transmitter, and he put up his antenna on a weekend and had 400,000 spot reports per day. 400,000. That's like 10%, or more than 5% of all the spots reported came from his one antenna that he put up in a day.
Yeah.
So so transmitting is easy. I mean, relatively easy. But receive sites are really difficult, and I think that you'd actually have to have a pretty good travel budget in order, because probably even if you had somebody there who was interested in maintaining it, getting a receive site up and working properly, to me is almost an art. And but once you do it, like I've done it at KPH, Phil Erickson wrote a wonderful letter to KPH and elicited tremendous response out of it. People are really interested in supporting this. Once they know the operators out at KPH were completely unaware of what we were doing out there, and said, "Wow, we've got all these other sites. They've got Guam. There's a wonderful place for a receive and transmit site. Maybe what about the sites that are doing no, I have a senior moment here. Super darn. What about? I mean, I've had some discussions indirectly about putting up a receiver at the a receiver at the Super darn site in northern Japan.
Yeah. Do you really want to put a receive site at a place where you have a pulsed radar?
Don't know. It'd be interesting to we've I mean, Paul's got his his receiver sitting next to 100 yards from his transmitter, and he's still reporting a reasonable number of spots, and we did nothing to suppress it. But
but
I have
a multi-100-watt radar.
I mean, I did.
Very interested people. I know you have Western Europe, but I have some very interested people with the radio, the Romanian astronomical, the National Institute of Astronomy, that have extremely quiet sites up in the Carpathians. I mean, nobody is there, and they have nothing to work with. They have no, but they're extremely excited to be involved in something like this.
Well,
Gareth and Christina, what do you think? What are your thoughts about expanding beyond the US for this particular grant?
I think it might be good to check with the
Go ahead,
program
Christina.
officer and see if that's what they have in mind for it, or to see if other grants that have recently been funded have done the same thing. Scientifically, I think it's an excellent idea. We could look at places where there are already ham radio installations and have that be like a, sort of use that to fill out where things might reasonably go. One thing that I could see being of potential use in certain sites would be to look at where are there de-expeditions and encourage people to set up monitoring stations as like an add-on to de-expeditions. Or like remote sites where people are operating when they're not, filling everything with RF noise, they could run a monitoring station because they've already got infrastructure for it. And that would be a way to really use the ham radio angle. And then there's also all of the stations that have participated over the years in the Eclipse campaigns. So it would also mean that we could continue riding the Eclipse train a little bit. Like we could put in the Eclipse paths for the next few years and see where those sensibly line up. See if there's any things that we would want to take.
Yeah.
One thing about it is if we're relying on WWV and WWVH as our primary beacons, the story gets a little bit more complicated. Because if you're deploying Grape 1s or if you're deploying Grape 2s and you're looking at that particular part of the band, then, that's going to be different in other places. But if we're looking at everything, then it doesn't really matter. Yeah, Yasmi is a good one. They have that whole set that they have. I was actually planning to put one in Ethiopia anyways. There's a site where a friend of mine is a physical anthropologist, so they have a radio tower.
If Nathaniel, if you'll allow me to share a page, let me.
Oh yeah,
show
definitely.
You. Let me show you guys the here. So, this is a set of web pages from his Grafana page. This is the created by Arnie, the German guy who's one of my contributors, and this is a summary of the Whisper. Now you can see here's a map of the world down here that shows you the concentration of receive sites, and you can see that there are so much concentration is in Europe and North America.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and transmitters. Well, the transmitter is a little weird because I think, in spite of the fact he says he's filtered out balloons, I think we're seeing balloons on the right on this page to the right. So below this, the lower panes are the Roland's sites, and he has some receive sites which I don't think are. But here's his beacon sites. He's got this thing sitting in the middle of South America, South Atlantic. I mean, he's got one out here in Mauritius. He's got one in India. He's got one in Kazakhstan. These are sites where these are almost the only transmitters in Whisper transmitters in the world. If you go look at this is his homepage. If you look at the live world view, this is well, we're looking at 40 meters right now, but you just look around the world, see where see where all of the Whisper transmissions are. There's nothing down here.
Now remember, most of those transmitters and receivers aren't necessarily frequency accurate.
It was interesting. Well, of course, what I'm saying is
they're good for signal to noise measurements, certainly.
No, but it was surprising to us, and we've Ryan Tolboom of New Jersey, a colleague of Gareth's, enhanced Whisper D decoder, which is now incorporated. And his enhanced version gives us the Doppler shift information from Whisper 2 transmissions. And looking at all of the Whisper 2 transmissions in Europe, we're seeing almost 10% of them appear to be stable enough to be useful for propagation measurements. That was a big surprise to me. But even if we only looked at the Whisper sound transmitters, and had them appropriately located, we would get we would get a lot of coverage that we're not getting now. That's the last 15 minutes on 40 meters. If we look at 20 meters, you can see that, of course, this is the primary band for everybody, and of course if we look at we're just looking for 15 minutes. So if we go for the last hour, we'll see. We may see a few more spots coming from South America.
Rob.
Anyway, that's why I see there's an opportunity down
Yeah.
here. Okay, that's my.
Also, Rob, can you explain to Christina your idea for getting kind of grape-like continuous Doppler measurements from the whisper sonde?
Well, it seems to me, I know, not being a signal processing expert by any means, I know a lot about video compression, but very little about radio. It seems to me, though, that in the process of demodulation, the Whisper D decoder synthesizes the transmitted signal, and then deconvolutes it out of the basebands, the spectrum, and then goes back and looks for second and third level signals at the same frequency. Well, if it's deconvoluted out the modulation of the transmitter, you could just subtract the two and in effect synthesize a continuous carrier wave. I mean, there's the little glitches every 1.5 seconds when there's a frequency transition, right? When you move between tones, but the largest portion of the transmit time would be could be, it seems to me, with signal processing, you could take a whisper signal and actually look at the drift directly the same way you look at it as you do with WWV carriers. And the advantage of which is you know what carrier you're looking at, for sure, because it's identified itself. And I think Michael Howen has shown that looking at WWV, a significant part of the time, you're getting significant contributions from both transmit sites.
Correct.
So it seems to me that the whisper recordings could be with someone. It's a pure software development project. And probably in a way, it's almost you could start with the Whisper D decoder and with Ryan's enhancement to the Whisper D decoder. You understand that Whisper D is the module that's included in WSJTX, and it's a standalone executable, exe on a PC or a executable, and it's standalone, and it's given as its input a WAV file, and it outputs a list of of spots. But in the process of doing so, it does a lot of signal analysis, and one of the things that Ryan was able to extract from a stage of that was he was able to extract the Doppler shift for the a number called spreading. It's Joe Taylor's metric. It's called spreading, but that spreading number is a proxy for Doppler shift, an absolute value for Doppler shift. But the stage with which that spreading number is calculated, there is a table there that has the transmitted frequency and the reconstructed transmit frequency with all the tone shifts, along with the actual received frequency and the tone shift. Well, instead of just looking at the difference, you could synthesize a continuous carrier wave by just subtracting the differences, and you'd end up with a WWV-like continuous carrier analysis off of every whisper signal being transmitted,
rather than what we have now,
which is
every 2 minutes. You get one shift.
We get number. Yeah, we get one
Yeah.
number. Right now, we get a single number at the end of the whisper transmission, which is very useful. and it's given us tremendous insights. Gwen has been able to identify propagation paths from that number. In combination with the absolute signal levels, he gets propagation path information. But if you wanted to look at just the carrier drift over the 2-minute period, the information is in 2 arrays, in Fortran arrays sitting inside the WhisperD decode utility. And someone who's Fortran literate, I suspect, could in several days start regenerating the original, unmodulated carrier from the Whisper reports. Of course, you'd have one for each decoded spot because they're, of course, at different frequencies. So you'd have a data management problem and so on. But that's, I think, a small problem. I think almost all the heavy lifting has already been done by WhisperD and by Ryan's extension to it. Anyway, that's my idea. I don't, and if I weren't still in the midst of great integration and error recovery for Whisper Demon, it would be an interest. I think it's a really interesting project and could result in some tremendous, a vastly greater set of data than we're able to get from the single, or the 2 transmit sites we get from Whisper Demon.
Absolutely.
From WWE. So does that make sense to you? Does that?
Yes, I'm not well versed in how the modulation on Whisper works, but is it like it's sidebands?
What the Whisper does is the WhisperD performs it does an FFT on the band, and then it looks at the frequency spread. It creates frequency bins, and then does a search for them. And that's as much as I know.
Let's talk about the basic modulation, though. I think, Christina, that was
Yeah.
your question. It is a simple 4 FSK. It just, there are, one of 4 FSK frequencies or tones. People talk about them as if they're audio tones because that's often the way they're generated using a single sideband, transmitter. But really, it's just 4 FSK with 4 shifts.
Okay.
And each tone duration, the tone, it's a constant carrier, and the tone duration is 1.3 seconds or something at each.
1.2 something, and the shift amount is the inverse of that, so it's a minimum shift, straight FSK, no filtering on the transitions.
So
yeah, that's a very interesting idea. If you can recover the carrier from all of them,
So on the receive side, the receive software WhisperD decodes performs an FFT on the 2-minute long recording, and then looks at the frequency bins, and extracts from them the signals that it finds there. So it's done all the FFTing and sorting out and identifying the signals that are present and what frequencies they're on, what tone they're on at each. I think that it divides it into, is it 40 milliseconds or 15 millisecond frequency bins with it? I think it's similar to what Phil does in K9Q. 50 millisecond bins with 10 milliseconds of overlap or something. It's anyway.
I think
not long discourse. I'm sorry to take us aside.
No. I think
that's really good. Thank you.
I think this is very interesting because I think it might be a way to solve the problem of the WWV is only in Fort Collins. And if we want to deploy these systems in other places where there is no WWV, I think this would be a really nice thing to develop. I don't think it's something that can be included in this particular proposal because this proposal has to be about deployment. I think
Maybe we could talk to ARDC or somebody, some other funding source for
Yes,
that.
I do think it should be pursued because it
Yeah.
sounds very interesting. I think what you've kind of sold me on, Rob, is I really do think that there's more of scientific value in figuring out how to do the deployment in places that are not the United States and Europe, because simply because there's nothing else in those other places. And you know, we talk about science targets. You can't do any science if you don't have any data. And we've got lots of data in the United States and Europe, so we can do lots of science there. So it's like adding 30 more receivers or transmitters to the United States. Like, what's that really going to do for us? Um, I think the thing that, so I mean, that's that part of it. The thing that scares me is, we only have a month to get this proposal pulled together, and it's very complicated. And trying to do all the work out all those logistics for these faraway places, I don't know that I can do that in the time I have.
Let me at least send an email off to Roland. I talked to him at last June at the Friedrichshafen convention about this, but we didn't have a whisper sound at the time.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea.
He could give you an idea of the difficulty, and the infrastructure he already has in place for maintaining, and so if this were an upgrade, it might
that's
reduce
that's very compelling, I think. If we if we have a single point of contact that has all these places already, and like we say, okay, look, we need to upgrade these particular places, and I think that might be doable.
The transmit side is because most of these sites are transmit, but
Right.
even just having transmitters in the middle of the South Atlantic would be a major step forward. I think provide a whole new set of measurements.
Yeah. And then these new transmit sites, they'd be GPS stabilized.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
And they would also, even though we don't have the whole Doppler scheme that you just explained going, we are able to use them to get the Doppler measurements, the Doppler spreading measurements every 2 minutes, like Wynn has already been using, right?
Yeah, and the continuous Doppler, I mean, that's a software upgrade. You can do it in place. You don't need to even send someone out to the site as long as you have internet access.
That seems very compelling.
Yeah, the transmit sites don't even need to have internet access, of course, although it's
right. No, the transmit does. I mean, if we're just talking about sending nicely stabilized synchronized whisper, the only change is in the receive end to do this enhanced Doppler. On whisper.
I kind of like this, where this is going. What do you think, Christina?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Anything that can set PSWS as something that is picking up things already happening in the ham sphere, I think is a good direction to go.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
The other thing about developing other quote unquote beacon stations is that as you get more stations, when you have N stations that are going off of WWV, you only have N propagation paths that you're monitoring.
Yeah.
If we are using whisper stations or something like that, then that grows at a much nicer pace.
Yeah.
Well, that's the whole distributed array thing too, or it could, I mean, that's certainly one way of discussing it.
Let me turn over. Jonathan, are you still there? Sometimes he drops off towards the end. I wanted to get his thoughts on where he was hoping to put where VLF receivers.
Yeah. I've always wondered whether the 888, how well it works down at 8 kilohertz.
You should
That's
try
a
it.
good question. It's a matter of the input transformers.
Yeah, I think it's entirely the input
Some of
transformer.
them, and they can be pretty good down there. There are transformers that work
It
down
would
there.
probably be possible if we had our own design to have units that were tweaked for that to some extent.
Hmm.
You know, with just alteration of the input path of the input signal
Yeah.
path, is my understanding.
Yeah.
Which is
And as for placement of VLF, you want it as wide as possible because it's a global propagation.
It'd be great if we could incorporate the ELF measurements into the 888, because there's plenty of processing power to and the mini circuits makes these isolation transformers that are 10 kilohertz to 20 megahertz. So
Right.
it seems like it's possible to make a transformer that has that would cover reasonably well down to the ELF frequencies. But this is the development project that maybe more than we want to discuss in the context of this proposal.
Of this proposal. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, so
Well, I think maybe we call it a night for tonight.
yeah.
It's 10:45 here almost. But I think we are so this conversation is going to continue on Wednesday morning. I have a 9 a.m. telecon scheduled with the PIs, so anyone, I realize that's early for some people and some people have work, which is why we're having this discussion on this call as well. But certainly anyone who would like to be part of the Wednesday morning discussion, just send me an email and I'll send you a link invite to it and you can join us on Zoom to continue being on that discussion.
This is 9 a.m. Eastern, right?
Yes, 9 a.m. Eastern. So it's like 6
So
a.m.
I'm a morning person. I might.
When, Nathaniel? What day?
Oh, Wednesday morning.
Wednesday morning.
Yeah, I can just add you to the
Yeah, please.
Because I'm sure this Wednesday we'll be continue having this discussion of where are we going to put these things, how much, how many of them are we going to?
I think a good start on that, by the way, would be if we have a Google Sheet, because you can set it up so a Google Sheet will auto-populate a Google map. So if you make a Google Sheet with all of the stations, and I know Bill has one to start, then I can make that into a Google map, and then we can all edit that live together in this meeting if needed.
Would you be able to come up with that, Christina?
Yes, but the problem is that my Google account is out of storage. So if you can make an empty Google Sheet and share it with me.
Sure, I would be. You just want a Google Sheet shared with you?
Yep, an empty Google Sheet.
Sure.
I know it's a dumb solution to a dumb problem.
I will be happy to do that.
I appreciate it. All right.
All right, I will do
as
that
you
in
want
like a second. Fun McGaw here. There you are. All right, so
and I don't know if this applies to anybody else, but I will not be able to attend this meeting next week because it's Passover. So but I will see you Wednesday to talk further about this.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to skip this Wednesday. I will be on the road between here and Friday Harbor.
Safe travels.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. Well, I will make that sheet and I will send it to you, Christina.
Thank you very much.
And I think I will wish everyone else a very pleasant evening. I will see some people Wednesday morning and then some people next week.
7-3.
7-3, everybody.
7-3.